En este momento, muchachos, les voy a presentar un personaje que viene directamente desde Nueva York. Él es un experto en estrategia, en mercado de producto y de contenido. Trabaja para Fusion, perdón. Pero hay algunos que no saben que es un tipo extremo. Es un tipo que le gusta además surfear. Ahorita estamos compartiendo unas historias durante el almuerzo. Podemos ver que a veces las cosas no salen como uno lo planea, porque estábamos hablando de hacer un biohacking de un tiburón. Surfear en un tiburón y hay que hacerle algo a su mente para poder potenciarla. Los dejo con el señor Devine. Un aplauso, por favor.
Muchas gracias. No es de verdad. Tiburón no, muy pequeño. ¿Cuántos de ustedes son hablantes nativos de español? Qué lástima para mí. Porque mi sobrino de 3 años habla mejor español que yo. ¿Permiso para hablar en inglés? ¿Sí? Gracias. A la próxima años, totalmente español. So I'm here to talk about why artificial intelligence is no longer an experiment that companies can spend some time with, but why it's now essential for the survival of businesses. But I actually wanted to show you a picture of what actually happened to my leg. So I think I got up with no problem, but coming down, muy mal. ¿Cómo se dice wakeboarding en español? ¿Estúpides? ¿Sí? Estúpidos. Sí. So it's interesting that Martin used the example of the car industry to describe the changes in the economy and the changes in manufacturing. We all remember, maybe we don't remember firsthand, but we all know that Ford revolutionized manufacturing with the assembly line in 1913. And as a result of that, the 250 companies that didn't adopt the assembly line in the automobile manufacturing world died within about 10 years. And there's actually a Wikipedia page that lists all of the former companies that operated in this space. And you can see the concentration of companies that died literally within 10 years after 1914. So it's very dramatic. It's a very obvious representation of what happens when you don't innovate. What's interesting is that if you made it through that period of revolution, this is a photo from 1935, regardless of what industry you were in, if you were listed on the S&P 500, which is a big index of all the biggest companies, your lifespan as a company was about 90 years. So you lived a very long life. But what's happening today is that the lifespan of big companies is actually getting much shorter. So today it's about 18 years, and it's expected to go down to 12 years by 2030. So our companies are dying younger. Does anyone know the one company that was listed on the original Dow Jones Index back in 1896 that's still alive today? Any guesses? Loud? I think someone said General Electric. Solamente uno. General Electric, still alive today. It's the only one that was on the original index. So what's happening is human lifespan is actually increasing, but company lifespan is going down. It's very interesting. Our people are living longer, but our companies are dying younger. So the oldest person alive today is Emma Morano. She lives in Italy. She's 117 years old. She's the oldest person alive today. So we don't know exactly why people live long or die short. Maybe it has something to do with exercise and eating well. But we still don't really know. It's still a big mystery. And there's actually a company. So these two guys on the left here, very famous entrepreneurs. It's Peter Diamandis on the left. He founded the X Prize. And the guy in the middle with Barba, he actually is a very established entrepreneur in the medical space. And they've started a company that's actually called Human Longevity to try to figure out how to make people live longer. So human longevity is still a mystery. But what's interesting, do we think that corporate longevity is a mystery? Do we know why companies live long or die young? It's actually pretty simple. We know why companies die young. These are great examples of companies that died because they didn't reinvent. They didn't observe the market and identify the signals that would have told them that it was time to change their business model. Blockbuster didn't really see streaming video coming. Maybe they did, but they thought, no es un problema. Kodak, iPhone photography, digital photography, no es un problema. And then Nokia, the smartphones, the swipe, no es un problema, no es necesario, right? So we also know why companies rebound. These are 3 companies that watched for signals in the market. So the founder of Netflix said, yeah, we're doing this great mail order thing, sending DVDs in the mail. That's a good business, but streaming is going to be bigger. So they made the investment to reinvent their business before they died. Xerox is another great example. Paper was going out of fashion. People didn't need machinas anymore or as much. So they said, we're going to get into the outsourcing business. And Adobe saw that people wanted software as a service. They wanted a subscription service instead of getting a CD and putting it on their hard drive. So these are three companies that were starting to go down, and they saw the market, and now they're healthy again. We also know why companies thrive. We know why they're successful. Each one of these big companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, they offer frictionless exchanges of value, and they use data to get smarter and smarter. That's their business model. That's why they're doing so well. This is a great article in Harvard Business Review, and it was from 2015, but it's still very current today. And the CEO of Aetna, a very big insurance company, and some consultants actually did research on when it was time for a company to reinvent. And it turns out there's actually very clear signals in the market and internally that tells you when it's time to retool, to rebuild your business. So the problem is that a lot of big companies today are using brute force to solve this problem, to try and reinvent. So these numbers here, the one on the bottom right there, the world is spending $3 trillion every year just to look for data and process data. Very simple cognitive tasks. Banking alone is spending $42 billion a year to process data. So we're spending a lot of money in brute force. It's not very smart. And that's because the work models of the past just don't work anymore. So you can see doing IT projects, like doing custom coding projects, it's too expensive, takes too long, and hiring a bunch of people creates more operating cost, and they don't scale. So the good news is that we are tool builders. We make tools that solve these problems, sometimes very big problems. From the coal engine to computers, we're tool builders, right? So about once every 100 years, we come up with a new, very big, very important tool. So back in the 1700s was the first industrial revolution, right? The steam engine. And then along comes electricity, the second industrial revolution. It took about 30 years for manufacturers to retool their plants with electricity. And then the internet was the third industrial revolution, or computers. Now we're in the fourth industrial revolution. I don't speak a lot of Spanish, but I heard Maritza talking about the Revolución Cuatro Revolución, I think. I picked up on that. So we're all talking about the same thing, basically. But this one's really big. This one's uniquely big. So PricewaterhouseCoopers says that this one is going to be worth about $15 trillion over the long term. So it's a very big tool. And what's interesting is that about half of what we do as a people, looking for data, processing data, repeatable physical tasks, can actually be automated with currently available technology. So that's 51% of the work that we do can be automated today. So it's going to change how we work, but there's a lot of confusion about how. How does it actually work? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Does anyone know what this is? No? I bet Richard does. I bet if Brian Cross is in the audience, he does. This is actually a schematic of waterfall development from the 1960s. It explains how software was built in the very beginning, right? So then along comes Agile, right? But it's basically the same thing, only más rápido. Same thing, but faster, yeah? A lot of nodding heads. You guys understand. I love this joke. I'm sorry it's not in Spanish. What are you working on? Well, I'm trying to fix the problems I created when I tried to fix the problems I created when I tried to fix the problems I created. That's what Agile is, right? It's a compounding set of rules, a compounding set of mistakes. Muy complicado. So everyone has probably seen an invoice. This is what you'd call unstructured data. And it's muy fácil. If the information is in one place, that means you can program rules to go in and find that one piece of information in the same format. But what happens if you have lots of different formats? No es posible. Es complicado. There's too many different variations of the same information. So every industry in the world has this same problem, from healthcare to banking, mortgage processing, shipping, tons of unstructured data. 80% of the data in every business is unstructured. That's a huge problem. And complexity and volume is rising at the same time. So this is a list of all the regulations in banking that have come out since 2008. And it's there's 10 of these here. They're all worth $100 million. And this is part of what's creating more complexity and more volume. So you guys may recognize the colors here. Azul, blanca, Facebook. Claro. So this is a model of how Facebook's algorithms work. Every time you click on a picture, or every time you like a post, their algorithms get smarter. So instead of writing rules and programming information with code, they take the data from all of their users, everyone uses Facebook here, to make their algorithms smarter. It's like a circular loop of learning. And other businesses are doing this too. Google has an AI stack. It's called TensorFlow. This is how they understand what to give us as far as recommendations when we search. And Amazon has an AI stack too. So all these big companies, GAFA, they're all using AI and data to become smarter and deliver better services. So what happens is the use of lots and lots of data and a little bit of code flips the way technology works. It changes the paradigm of computing from using a lot of code and a little bit of data to automating one small, simple task to using a little bit of code and a lot of data to automate an entire role within a business. So this is how automation works. A good example is Google Translate, which is actually how I learned how to say the things that I said at the beginning of the presentation. Shh. So the first generation of Google Translate was around 500,000 lines of code, but the second generation is only 500 because it has enough data. It's constantly learning from data. So a lot of these big companies that are our users, our customers at WorkFusion, like banks, insurance companies, healthcare companies, they say, oh, AI is too difícil, too hard. And you read a lot of press about companies making mistakes in AI and spending a lot of money on companies like IBM Watson. And that's because there's research, a research survey done by Deloitte figured out what the top objections, what the biggest problems of AI within a company. And the first one is that it's too difficult to integrate cognitive technology into processes. And most of the rest of them, just if I were just to summarize, it's because it's too expensive, it's too hard to find the experts, and nobody knows how to use it. But all these problems are starting to go away. And this little video here explains exactly how it works, how it's automated. So you remember the factura, the invoice examples? Imagine all different formats of factura, all laid out. They all have the same information. And when a person goes and clicks on each example of the data, and then they go to another one, and they find the same information in different formats, that creates a data set altogether. And the next time all that information goes through machine learning models, the models are exposed to all the different examples, all the different locations, the different content within the documents, and the models categorize the information in different categories. This is the amount, this is the quantity, this is the date, this is the address. So when new information comes through the model has already been trained enough to identify those same pieces of information in new sets. And all of this happens through historical data and in real time. And it basically means that you can non-intrusively gather data. The patterns are automatically recognized with pre-built machine learning models. It's integrated into the workflow, and you have predictive analytics as an output. So you can basically tell the future in terms of productivity and capacity of your business. So this is another slide to explain how it works. This is that loop I was talking about, the virtuous loop. So what our product does, WorkFusion, is it has a set of models that are built into the software, and it identifies first which model is best to use. Senor Daniel from the university was talking about Markov models and deep learning neural nets. I understood that. So our software can identify which model is the best model, and then it identifies the patterns of the work. It automates each individual field automatically, and it does so all within a company's firewall with their data. And anytime there's an exception, a person handles it, and you get structured data as an output. So this solves the problem of unstructured data. We've also developed something to automate quality control. So people may understand maker and checker. One person does the work, another person checks the work. So our software automates quality control as well. And it can look at every single output of a model, or it can look at some using statistical quality control. And this is another way of solving the problem of how do you scale AI within a big company, by solving the problem of quality control. So the big answer is, what is the model of the future? If we're not doing IT projects and we're not hiring a bunch of people that don't scale, the model of the future is software robots that learn from data and work hand in hand with people to get smarter. So another question, can companies last forever? We know that the lifespan is going down. Can we increase the lifespan of companies? So really, it comes down to people and code. We know that people have limits, right? You can only hire so many people at one time. But we know that software increasingly has no limits. So if you think about applications, the big systems at the bottom of a company and all the services that they provide up front, like customer onboarding, claims handling and insurance, reconciliations and healthcare, what WorkFusion has done is built one platform that automates all of the work of using AI, of using machine learning and robotics to automate that kind of complicated work in the middle of big systems and the services that big companies provide. So AI-driven software removes the limits of enterprise productivity. And if you think about the type of work that the first generation of software did, it was great at automating things that you didn't have to think about, like copy-paste, copy-paste. We call it, in English, swivel chair work. Entiendo? See? So AI is the second generation of automation, and that automates a lot more of the complicated work. So instead of just automating work that you do with your hands, it automates some of the cognitive work. So the other great benefit of AI-driven software is analytics. So instead of just knowing when the software fails, using AI, you're able to predict and prescribe the best actions within a company. So if you're taking in data from all across the enterprise, from people, from software robots, you can begin to predict what kind of capacity you'll need over time. You'll be able to predict the accuracy of individual people, and both the people, individuals, and also the entire company. So it changes the way companies can plan by using data to train automation. So if I were to sum up my whole presentation, the fourth big tool, the fourth big revolution is now fácil. It's now much easier. So all of these things that I've talked about solve each individual problem. By having it built in the workflows, AI is easy. By doing it at scale, the infrastructure is cheaper. Computing is cheaper now. By automating the training of machine learning and not having to go out and find data sets, you can train automation very fast. And you've also got the ability to let people do the work on this software, so it's much easier now. And by having pre-built models, it accelerates the pace of scale. And the last one is predictive analytics. So that's kind of what's happening here. This is a great book I'd recommend if you want to read about enterprise transformation. Jeffrey Moore is one of our advisors and investors at our company, and he wrote a book that describes all the things that a big company needs to do to transform. And what's interesting, I was having lunch, I had the pleasure of having lunch with the CEO of Globant, Martin, and he was saying that every year they reinvent their business. Every year Globant completely rethinks their go-to-market. And they're a big company at this point, thousands of people. So, I don't know how many of you guys work for Globant, how many of you are customers, but this is an example of a big company that inherently knows when it's time to reinvent, because they are built, you, Globant, are built with data as your DNA, with intelligence at your core. So any of you who work for Globant, you're in good hands, and any of you who are customers, you made a good choice. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to send you my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions about WorkFusion or about artificial intelligence. Muchas gracias.